Welcome to Impact the World, the show for and about creatives, changemakers, and entrepreneurs. This is a conversation episode where a special guest shares with me what they are creating and the behind-the-scenes journey of their experience. Hello, welcome to Impact the World. And if you are a regular viewer or listener, it helps us reach more people if you subscribe, leave a rating or a review. So depending on which platform you're tuning in on, doing that really helps. So if you do, thank you so much from me and my team. Today's episode is one that I have been looking forward to for a long time. And it's actually a conversation that has been on the cards for a little over a year. But the time was right now. My guest is Becki Koon. And Becki, as you'll learn, is someone I've known for a decade. Becki works as a facilitator in so many different ways. She's a HeartMath coach. She is an intuitive. She does Reiki. There are so many different things that Becki was already doing to hold space for people around their spiritual journey. But then in 2019, she suddenly lost her beloved partner, Jack. And in a very short space of time, she lost Jack, and not too long after, she realized that she was connecting with Jack in the afterlife. So Becki wrote an incredible book called 20 Days Changed Everything, and it's all about moving through conscious death to the afterlife connection. We talk in detail about that. We also talk about the surprise curveball that Becki experienced last year around her own health. And we speak about grief in general and the layers of grief and how grief can be an incredibly transformative process, as well as all of the emotions that you have to go through. So this is one of my favorite shows. And Becki, in all the time I've known her, has always just been such a special and heart-based soul. So whether you're just curious about this or whether you resonate with the topics that we're going to speak about, I hope you enjoy hearing from Becki Koon and her journey in this show. Becki, thank you so much for being with us today. And this is a conversation that has been something that has been in my kind of mind and vision board for probably almost a year now, to have this conversation with you. And we first met a decade ago. I
Yes.
wasn't exactly sure when, but you came to me for private sessions back when I still did those. And I always loved working with you. You were always
Yes.
such a bright soul. And so it's a real pleasure to get to have this talk with you today about your journey and about your book and about Jack and just everything that you have been through and are putting out into the world to help people.
Yeah, thank you. It's just such a pleasure to be here with you, Lee.
So, Becki, I mean, you have this extraordinary book, which we're really going to focus on today. I'll pop it there so that everyone can see. It's 20 Days Changed Everything. And I mean, I've heard some stories in my time, but what you went through with your beloved Jack kind of is just extraordinary. Would you mind, for anyone who doesn't know you or hasn't read the book yet, to just give us a kind of overview of what happened and what you guys went through together?
Sure. So, we had this amazing relationship, Lee. We had 12 amazing years. I'd found my soulmate in Jack, and we were both very much similar in our spiritual aspects and life in general. So we got to explore all kinds of things in this life together. Very, very connected. And in September of 2019, we found out that he had terminal cancer and that it was inoperable and was not at all what we had even expected. He wasn't even that sick. We were just going through life, and he had a cold, we thought. And it wasn't just a cold. It was something that we ended up moving through in a very short period of time. So he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and it had metastasized into many, many organs. And we went through the process of what that was going to be like. And at first we didn't know, Lee. We thought maybe it was going to be a miracle, because we know the body is amazing. We know that miracles happen all the time. So we weren't sure in the beginning. But about 10 days into what he was experiencing and dealing with, he knew. And he came to me and asked me if I would be with him in the process of him leaving the planet. And what did we need to do? How could we support each other? So in 20 days, our life went from a pretty normal, normal life to he was gone. And in that 20 days, we did some amazing things, some intense things, some challenging things, and some beautiful things. And we knew that I knew that I was going to be sharing this process. In fact, Jack knew that I was going to be writing a book. He knew that this book was going to be coming forward. We knew that we had a contract together. And in fact, we knew that death was going to be part of what we experienced together. Like, we came together to do this journey. I just didn't know what, after he passed, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how this was going to play out. But I did know that there was probably going to be something to share with people.
So in the 20-day period that you had, where you were aware of what was going on and how everything was terminal, like, did you have any idea of the amount of time? Like,
No.
did you know it was going to be that short?
No. In fact, we weren't sure at all the length of time, because we just found out. But he was going downhill fairly quickly, physically. So we just went, and we went into our intuitions. We went into this process together of letting go as quickly as we could. And so at one point, Lee, there was a point in time where he was meditating. He did a lot of meditation, and we did Reiki, and we did all kinds of things to support him. And he was meditating, and I saw him, and I went over and I sat by his side, and he had a black kyanite stone, and he had it placed right in his chest right here. And he was meditating and really going internal. And I went over and I sat next to him, and I put my hand on his hand. And what came through me was so powerful. And it was like, you know how to do this, Jack. Let's do this. Let's make this be as quick and as easy as it can be for you. And he was doing the same thing. He was talking to his body. He was talking to his cells. He was saying, okay, if this is the process that I'm going through, then let's make this happen. Let's do this. We know how to let go. And so I believe absolutely that assisted the process, Lee. It assisted in him being able to let go of the physicality, of him being able to let go of me, of this world, of the things that he held so dear. And so during that 20 days, I was journaling what was happening. I was just journaling because it started out as a love letter to him. I was just writing the process and sending it as a letter to him and reading it to him along the way. So the book started out that way, as a love letter to my love.
That 20 days must have been the most intense or most hyper-aware days of your life. But I also wonder, was there a part of you, knowing that you were going to lose him, did you have time to be in that part of you that was either dreading what was to come or fearing what was to come? Or were you able to just put that part of you aside in order to be in union with him for as long as you could, and then that came later?
It actually came later, because I think because I was so hyper-focused and because it was so fast. And he had asked for me to assist, right? I would have not been anywhere else, Lee, and I wouldn't have done anything else but be there with him every moment, doing what I could to support him. I had a few moments. I would break down. We would cry together. We cried together. But I think I really found something within me, a strength and a power, knowing that this was this journey that we were taking, and we wanted to do it in the best possible way for him, that I found the strength to do that. I found the strength to kind of set aside, my personal grief and complete heartbreak. And I experienced that after he left. And, but even then, it wasn't long, and he he came back.
And that is one of the most extraordinary things, not just about your and Jack's experience, which goes on today, and he's here with us behind you in photo form. But I was telling you right before we started, I could hear him laughing away about the fact that we were doing this.
Yeah.
I'd love to read just an excerpt from the beginning of the book, because one of the things I think is extraordinary about the book is that each chapter ends with a channeled message from Jack, which I think is brilliant. But I'm just going to read some of your beautiful book, if I can.
Absolutely, Lee.
My love no longer has life here, but I see him, feel his loving presence, speak with him, receive messages from him. The deep spiritual connection we shared has not disappeared. It has transformed, taken on a new life, a new identity, one of eternal, undying love. Does that mean I'm not experiencing grief and sadness? Not at all. I find myself in moments that catch my breath, stop me in my tracks, tears always ready to erupt and fall. And yet, I celebrate that I behold him in his soul expression, layered with so much love, so much light. So much bliss, I find myself having no fear of joining him, any fear of death now gone from my psyche. What I know, physical death is not the end. It is a passing from one form into the next, and our loved ones are always near. If we choose to become aware, we can all learn how to connect. Jack is in constant communication with me now, and I am learning to let go of any doubts, to allow and trust this new form of relationship with him. The veil between our dimensions is becoming transparent. At the end of each chapter is a channeled message from Jack. He is thrilled to share this information with all of us. And that's just from the introduction for anyone listening. So, we will put notes, both to links to Becki's website and also the book in the show notes. But it's extraordinary, and it's funny because I said to you before we started the conversation that when I channel the Z's, they've been talking about grief being a really huge theme on Earth in this period that we're in and in the years to come.
Yes.
And I have a very good friend who is wonderful at working with conscious death and dying. And we often talk about how we as human beings have been trained to fear death or grief or feel awkward around it and not know what to say. You had such a conscious experience with Jack. How have you found people's response to that? Perhaps especially in the early days, I'm wondering what you noticed about the way that we as a collective respond to grief. Sure, some people are great with it, but were there things that you noticed that were common discomforts for people?
I haven't had a lot of people show discomfort, Lee, because I think people are so ready to see it in a different light. And so for the most part, everyone I've encountered have been open and receptive, and maybe they've experienced it very differently, the grief that they've had or that they've shared with me. But there's so much desire in people to want to know that it's okay, know that there's maybe something more, and that maybe their loved ones are near, or that the experiences they have, that they can move through. I think one of the things that I've been able to share with people, Lee, that has been so powerful for me is that knowing that I hold grief in one hand, right? And complete heartbreak. And I can hold complete bliss and connection in the other in the same moment. Like really recognizing that the human heart has this amazing capacity to experience it all at the same time. And it's okay. It's okay. And so it's been interestingly, because I've been really paying attention, because I do see a lot of people, obviously, who have lost someone and wanting to maybe experience it a little bit differently than staying stuck in complete grief. They want to know that there's opportunity to maybe connect, or that they have the potential. So it's been very positively. I think Jack and I think one of the things that's so important for us as a team, because we're still sharing this, is that we all have this amazing ability to connect. And just because they're gone, just because they've taken off their earth suit, doesn't mean that they're not here with us and loving us and supporting us. And I feel that it's like it's like grounding that divine love energy down into me. Jack holds this light that gets to come, and I get to be that beacon for others.
Yeah, and you've been working in many different ways with people as a facilitator, as a soul coach, spiritual coach, and I know you also work with your Reiki.
Oh,
But I'm guessing that since you've been through this, that a lot of the people are coming to you, as you said, with this in mind. It's
yes.
probably quite significantly changed your work and the kind of people you're working with.
It has actually changed the work, because what ended up happening, and I think I share this in the book, is that I got used to feeling Jack and sensing Jack around and connecting and communicating with him. What I wasn't expecting, Lee, was that I would be in a Reiki session and have a spirit come through to me, a gentleman who'd lost his daughter.
Mm.
And he came, and we were just going to do Reiki. And all of a sudden I'm hearing a female voice, and she asked me to share something with her dad. And that was something not expected on my part at all. But has evolved, so that the work that I am doing is, it's, I never know what's going to show up or what's going to come through, but it's definitely opened up a portal, and Jack is there always as kind of this facilitator helping me.
I love that you share that, because certainly when I was growing up, and still to some degree to this day, we had very defined ideas of what intuition was or how the skill would show up for different people. Well, this person is a medium and they speak to people who've passed on, and this person, I never experienced it that way. Like for me, it was always, oh, well, the channel is open, so I would get people's relatives come through, but I never classed myself as a medium. It was just, and I think that's the truth of us being able to receive and us developing that ability to connect and receive. But I do think that for many people on the planet still, mediumship is a gateway to understanding that there is a spiritual world on this planet as well. Still a really
Yes.
important way that people who would otherwise perhaps be skeptical of their own intuition can start to recognize, oh, there is something else here than just what I can see with my physical eyes, or hear physical sounds in the room.
And so a lot of what I'm doing now is I'm working with people to help them figure out what that is for them, because everybody's so unique. We're all so different, and it shows up differently for everyone. And so, finding and exploring what that might be for them has been beautiful. It's been a beautiful process. I feel so blessed. I feel so blessed, Lee. And I know that's hard, because in that same blessing, I have had such loss, but being able to share that and support other people in that journey of grief and in that journey of maybe discovery of something new has been amazing.
Well, in all the time I worked with you all those years ago, you always had a great capacity for gratitude and for being in touch with blessings. So, I think that's why it's so important for us to cultivate those kinds of qualities in ourselves and in the way that we see the world, because then I do think no matter what life is throwing at you, or no matter what you're having to process that's tough, you maintain this connection to light and spirit, and you don't
Yes.
have to turn the light off for yourself completely, which is, as we know, those of us who've been in that place, it's a really hard place to be in when everything is dark for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And we're not alone in that, and I think one of the things, Lee, that's been beneficial too is, I've been there, I know that experience, and I've been there. And so there's a certain level of energy awareness, energy capacity, and knowingness that I hold in my field, that others who've been through difficult times hold in their field. I mean, we all have this awareness within us in our fields, energetically, and people know that. They know.
Mm-hmm.
They resonate with that. So the book has just been a huge gift that I've been able to give, and Jack was able to give. And I just feel honored that people have connected with it.
I want to read one of the kind of final messages from Jack in the book.
Okay.
Or part of it. Hello, my love. Thank you for walking this path with me, remembering who we are. As life moves forward, synchronicity will play a big role in the people you meet, those with whom you will work, learn, grow, and love. In time, you will find another human love, but our love is beyond dimensions, a oneness of being that is eternal. You are growing more comfortable with that, aren't you? All who read, I want to help people understand the death passage does not mean the end of love or soul connection. Your beloveds are not gone from you. Yes, the physical body may no longer be on the planet, but their soul essence lives on, ready to commune. The transition of form does not mean finality. People can learn to feel their loved ones, sense them, communicate with them, be comforted by them. Comfort can show up in many ways, such as when you, my love, found the stone I left for you at the labyrinth. I'm so glad you noticed. There is so much fear in the world, but it is showing up for humanity to see and shift, change, transmute. Some couples, those abler souls mentioned, have incarnated together, their connection forming a bridge between realms. Many parents and children have a strong soul connection, unbroken by loss, the connection spanning dimensions. People have forgotten they are more than the human form, the third dimensional density keeping fear in place. When people step into the light of awareness and fear subsides, they find magic, synchronicity, life, everlasting in all its many expressions, birth, life, death, spirit, all just phases of the one immortal soul. Honor the divinity within. You have forgotten how powerful you are as humans. The ascension of Earth does not happen without you, and you are pulling the dense consciousness into higher states of frequency. I mean, it's beautiful, it's true, it's vast.
Mm-hmm.
When did your channeling with Jack really begin? Did it happen immediately or did it take some time?
It took a little time. It took me getting through my grief period, my really deep grief period after he left. But he came to me 3 weeks after he passed in meditation. So I had this amazing experience with him, Lee, in meditation and him being very present. And then as I was writing, it took me several months to kind of move through personally what I needed to go through. And then I started actually writing on the book again pretty earnestly in January. So it had been just a few months after he passed, but I really started kind of journaling again and writing. And so when I was formulating the book, like when the book was coming through and Jack was talking to me, I have always done channel writing. You were a great teacher, Lee. Years ago, I started doing channel writing based on, your suggestion. And it's become a part of what I do just to connect, right? Just to support that connection. But what I realized is that I could really connect with Jack really strongly. Like he came through really strong right away. And so I've been doing channel writing with him ever since. And it's powerful. It's what comes through is just, it's amazing to me.
It's beautiful. It's really extraordinary. And so the book, it sounds like you just felt completely compelled and drawn to create the book. But at what moment did you start to think, okay, well, I'm going to figure out how to publish this and how to get it out into the world? Like, when did that all start to kick in for you? And what was that process like?
I ended up writing with a small a publishing company that does collaborative books. And I ended up working with them with sharing some stories along the way, Lee, and they were amazing to work with. And so I already kind of had in the pipeline, I had this connection. In fact, my first story with this company it's called As You Wish Publishing. My first story was being edited while Jack was going through death. While we were going through that process. So it was interesting that it just kind of fell into place for me to then consider continuing that relationship when I knew that there was another book coming. Like I knew I had to write the book, Lee. Jack was like, Becki, we have work to do. It's like, we're not done. We have a book to write. And so that was kind of in the back of my mind, even during the death process, Lee.
And it's interesting. I've certainly had this experience, and I've spoken to lots of authors privately or on this show about what happens when you put the book out into the world. How
Oh,
it changes you on a
mhm,
cellular level, on a
mhm.
level of self-perception, on the way that other people perceive it. It's a whole shift. What was that like for you when the book was finally out and beginning to permeate people's lives?
Well, it was a huge release for one, because I had been, when I was in the thick of writing the book, I actually did like a writing sabbatical where I was just immersed in it for a good month. And so it was emotionally really taxing on me, and physically. So after the book was released, it was like, okay, okay, I can take a breath. I'm good. It's going to be out there. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to touch the people it needs to touch. And so it was a huge release. Um, but then, I ended up having some challenges last year.
Yeah. So walk us through what happened last May. So this was May of 2021.
Mhm. So in March of 2021, I went and I took a journey with Jack's ashes.
Mm.
And because of COVID and what had happened, it was a year later than what I wanted to, but it was fine. It was intense for me. And when I got back off of that journey in April, I found a lump in my breast, and it was significant size. It was large enough. I knew I needed to get it checked out. So in May, almost 20 months after I heard, after I was dealing with Jack's cancer, I hear the word cancer again. And this time it was me, and it was stage 3 breast cancer. And I knew that I had some choices I had to make. Like I knew that I was at a place in my life where my body was showing me um, some opportunity points. I saw it as opportunities to figure out really what did I want to do, because I think, Lee, I think I was living kind of in that middle zone,
Mm.
because I'd been so connected to Jack and I knew where he was at and the energy is amazing. And I'm like, do I really want to stay without him? And I think I really questioned that in myself. But I recognized that I wasn't done. I'm not done. I'm not done. And I had to, but I spent some time in front of this picture with Jack one day. And I said, Jack, I love you unbelievably, but I'm choosing to stay. I'm going to stay on this planet. I'm going to do what I need to do, what I feel drawn and compelled to do and share in the world. And from that point forwardly, then I knew my journey was okay. So now what do I need to do
Mm.
to find life and vitality and deal with what I'm dealing with? So, I had surgery. I had a lumpectomy. I had surgery. Luckily, it wasn't in my lymph nodes, but it was, stage 3. And so I did some radiation, tons of alternative healing and therapies. And, I'm sitting here now 9 months later and I feel amazing. I feel amazing. Like the life force is back in me. This is the journey that I'm taking. And what's interestingly is it's not separate from the journey I take with Jack. Like the grief and the shock of losing Jack was part of what was in my body. It's
Mm.
part of what my body was holding.
Mm.
So I actually channeled with my cancer cells.
I know you told me before we got into this conversation you would be open to sharing that with us. So if you don't mind sharing
Okay.
the channeling from the cancer cells, that would be incredible.
I will share. So this was in August, when I really went into channel. I did the same thing that I do with Jack. I talked to my cells and I said, cancer cells, and I said, what are you here to show me? And this is what they said: choice. You always have choice. You always have a choice to heal, a choice to stay stuck, choice to recognize your divine power, choice to leave, choice to stand strong in your own journey, choice to listen to others' wants and desires, choice not to listen, choice to walk in joy, beauty, and sovereignty, no matter the circumstance. It is your awareness of choice that we have shown you. You are listening, and we, your body cells, applaud you for your wisdom and strength to step into awareness of what works for you. We want you to love yourself first and foremost. Do not overlook your body. You are learning. And when self-love becomes a constant state of being, we no longer need to manifest. Allow your feelings to rise and move. Allow the learning to flow out onto the page as you share with others. We are part of a bigger collective, a collective consciousness that can move into a different state of being, but it must be done with conscious intent. Thus, the healing can take place within, which was within my body, as well as without. The learning is part of the collective desire to transform. Many people use our types of cells to leave the earth plane, a part of a bigger plan. But we are not to be feared and to be at war with. Love us into non-existence. Love us into a transformational energy that cleanses the heart and soul and changes lives. Complete love of self is key. Can you love that completely, that fully? Your body that shows you the pocket of unwellness in your soul. We only exist as a modifier of energy, a catalyst for the body, mind, and soul to shift, to change, to expand into something new. It's your choice. Life, death, health, illness, healing, lesson, change, love.
Mm. When you read that back after channeling it, what happened for you in receiving that message?
I knew then that I was on the right track. Like I knew that I was, to trust my own intuition and my own insight, and that the journey was a very powerful journey. I was a little nervous to share that with people, Lee, because it's not the standard approach at all. I've been nervous a little bit because it's like, love us into non-existence. Don't fear us. Love us into non-existence. And yet, again, I'm feeling compelled to share that because it's something that so many of us experience and deal with.
I think I so understand your reticence, because even as you were reading it, I'm listening to it, and to me, everything that you shared I'm in complete alignment with it. However, I also witness the language that has been used around,
Yes.
beat cancer, fight cancer. It's very warlike.
Yes.
And while I'm in full support of that being the way that someone tackles it, if that's how they align with it, of course,
Yes.
great. Well, you do you, and you do it the way you want to do. I
Yes.
do know ultimately that has a lower frequency in it. So partly what you're bringing through, I think, offers another alternative. And of course, it won't resonate with everybody.
Exactly.
And the people who don't resonate with it don't need to fight it. They should carry on doing it the way they do, which we know doesn't always happen. But I think what can be very triggering for people, us as humans, if you've lost somebody that you love and you're still in the grief phase, or you still feel like someone was taken away from you, it's going to be almost impossible to hear those kinds of words. And yet, I think that's one of the biggest problems we have as a society. We have not reminded ourselves as we grow up that life is not promised. I think part of the reason that grief is so overwhelming and such a level of heartbreak for people is we've kind of edited that out. And we talk about someone dying early as if it's a shock or a tragedy or something has happened that should never have happened. And yet, if you really look at the world, I've got so many friends who lost children or lost loved ones or sudden deaths. And it is a part of our society. But I think one of our biggest diseases is that we don't really talk about that, and embrace the fact that, well, if we're here today and our loved ones are here today, that's something we should be grateful for and celebrate.
Yeah. And it's such a gift. And so for me, Lee, it was, here I am. I had Jack, who left the planet with cancer, right? That was how he left. And then here I am dealing with cancer. And this is what my cancer cells were sharing with me. So it was this really interesting mix for me of, acceptance and recognizing that there was a bigger plan that maybe I didn't quite understand, or that Jack didn't quite understand, but I do now because he is in a different place, right? And that that larger plan was that he was to leave the planet, that we were to experience death together, and that that we were to experience this afterlife connection and this divine love that is available, and then share that in the world. And so, as heartbreaking as it is, and was, and still continues to be at times, I recognize the divinity in the plan, the divinity in what we experienced. And so Jack, his process was using cancer to exit.
Mm.
Mine is the other side of the yin and the yang of it, is that I'm moving through and learning what the cancer can show me and how to move through onto the other side of it, staying here.
It's funny, the synchronicities that we have in life. I'm always struck by whenever I have a conversation like I'm having with you now, all the things that have been going on in my life in the days leading up to it. And I'm sure it's similar for listeners or viewers who've chosen to tune in on this conversation today. A couple of days ago, I was with a friend who I was there when her husband suddenly died, just with no warning. And so, it's interesting. We were talking about the last couple of years and the journey of the ups and downs of grief. But one thing I was reminded of many, many years ago when I was channeling my guides, the Z's, they said something to me that I'd never considered about death, but that always stuck in my mind. They said that when we die, we choose to die at the right time, not just for us, but for everyone around us. And that there is an impact that is supposed to happen to the people left behind. And so the timing can be that when the timing becomes the most, I don't even remember how they put it, but let's say appropriate for the whole group or the people who are most closely connected, then the death can happen. And the Z's have said for years and years, and anyone who knows me is probably bored of hearing me say this, they say you can die anytime. It's really easy to leave the planet. And yet our death is always in some way designed to have an opening effect or a healing effect or a transformational effect on the people that are left behind. And you are very aware and present to that fact in the way that you just experienced it. So thank you for sharing that and for knowing that and for holding that space for all of us. Right.
Thank you. It is part of what Jack and I are doing. I'm very aware of that I'm able to hold a frequency of awareness that hopefully others can, benefit from. Lee. It is part of the service of if I can move and grow through what I've been through, and Jack can share something from his side of, what he's doing over there, or wherever he is. He's everywhere. But just helping others, it makes it all worth it. I'm so honored to hold that for others, to hold that space, to hold that frequency.
What kinds of things was Jack saying to you when you were diagnosed last year? So what were some of the messages or reflections that he was giving you that you still remember about that time when you were in that choice point where you were wondering, should I stay, should I go? What was he saying?
He very clearly was telling me, no, it's not your time. He says, I can't do my work with you if you're not on the planet. He was very clear, Becki, it's not your time. And you just need to go through these emotions, and you need to trust, you need to trust, you need to trust that you know what your body needs, you know what you need to do. So it was always, he was continually reminding me that this was the journey that we were to take, that we were to share this experience. I had to be here in order for him to share what he's sharing, right? I have to be present on the planet. And so he was very clear that, it wasn't my time, and that, I just was learning another side of this.
Well, and he also talks in the introduction, the part I read out earlier at the beginning about, you're going to meet another human love. And so, you clearly weren't done last year.
No.
Because Jack's predictions hadn't yet played out. So I know that you are now really beginning to document this journey that you are now having, and that's going into, that's going to become your next book. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So, the journey that I've gone through in the last year, and what is it like to not move forward from the connection that I have from him, but is it possible to go forward? Is it possible to find another love? Is it possible to step into that, recognizing that you've had this amazing soul connection with someone, and yet if you've lost them, what do you do? How do you do it? How do you navigate still being on the planet? Is there a way that we can move through and find love, find life, find joy again, right? So that's what this next book is going to be, Lee.
Mm, which is perfect. I just had a conversation weeks ago with someone I'm close to who lost their love a couple of years ago, someone else actually, and we were talking. Somehow it came onto the idea of finding another love, and they were like, "Well, I can't replace them." And I was just saying, well, you'll never replace them.
Mhm.
It will be a different love. You will always love that person that you were with, always, and that will always be a part of who you are. And that's one of the
Mhm.
things the Z's have always said. We all have a love line, and even the person that you spend a weekend with, who you have a
Yeah.
love experience with, is part of your love line and part of your learning and part of your journeying. And I think sometimes certainly in the Western culture, we get very boxed in about, well, I can't replace them, rather than, well, no, of course you can't.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you
Right.
then have to, I think of my grandmother, who I think was a widow when she was about 50, and she lived
Mhm.
till she was 90, and I never saw her date anybody. And that's kind of tragic to me.
Mhm.
So I love that you're also exploring your next phase and helping other people with that phase, because I'm sure that's a sticking point for many people.
It is. It is because the reality is I'm not going to find another Jack. I'm not. Um, and he keeps saying, but you're not moving on from me. I'm not losing my connection with Jack. That's not going to happen. But I am going forward in life, and he is encouraging that, and he is supporting that, and he says, Becky, you deserve to have that love. You deserve to have love in your life. So, I think we get stuck thinking that we've got this, lifelong commitment, or this commitment that we have, and that we're never going to find another love. And the reality is we have this amazing capacity as these humans with this amazing heart, right, connection to love. We have this amazing capacity to love, Lee, in many ways, right?
And to connect. And I
And
think
to
that
connect.
that's often
Yeah.
where I love seeing how the consciousness around divorce or separation is also beginning to change. Like, people don't need to be judged because that happened, either by other
Yeah.
people or by themselves. Like, I think if two people come to a point where they're like, oh no, we're not supposed to be in this form together anymore. We need to
Right.
go different ways. I like seeing the consciousness lightening up around that a little bit on the planet, because it's the same principle, really.
It is. In fact, I have a dear friend right now who's leaving a 35-year marriage, and they're doing it very consciously.
Mm,
They're doing conscious separation,
yeah.
which is a beautiful thing. It's not easy, but they're navigating it in a way that's very, very clearly, um, through awareness and acceptance and a deep love for each other as they do separation.
Mm. Well, it's interesting, Becky, knowing you now for a decade,
Mhm.
I'm not at all surprised. I was surprised what happened for you and
Mhm.
Jack, of course. Like, when
Yeah.
I heard the news, I was really stunned.
Yeah.
But I'm not at all surprised the way that you have approached it, the way that you have experienced it, and I mean all of it, honoring the grief and the pain and the
Mhm.
sadness, but at the same time emerging from it with that connection that I think makes you so inspirational to so many people. I mean, just I think people will be listening to you in this conversation, and for many people, it's going to be a lifeline. So, if we could go back 4 years, this is a hard question to ask you, I guess, but are you surprised with how you have managed to traverse this? I mean, none of us could ever predict something like that happening in our life. Or does this feel like who you always were designed to be, and the foundation that you and Jack had set you up for this? Or do you feel like some divine intervention came in for you in the last few years that just helped you raise everything in a different way?
I think I was always destined to do this, Lee, or to step into something. I always thought I was going to write a book about a different subject, about raising a challenging son or a challenged son. I knew I had a book in me, Lee. I knew I had something to share in the world. Had no idea it was going to be Jack's death. But I was aware that, Jack and I talked about this in the process of him leaving. He said, Becki, when I leave the planet, you're going to fly. You're going to fly. You're going to find in you that the relationship isn't holding you back anymore. And Lee, what ended up happening was I found that strength inside of me that was probably already always there, but not present in that way. It didn't need to come out. It didn't need to present itself until I had gone through this huge, huge event in my life. And so stepping into this strength that I didn't know existed, I didn't know it existed within me, but it certainly has. It has shown itself, and it is blossoming, and it is helping me step forward and inspire, and really, truly, hopefully, inspiring other people.
For sure you
Mhm.
are.
Thank
Both
you.
on the
Yeah,
in the
thank you.
one-on-one work that you're doing, and that's why I was so excited to have you on the show, because
Well, thank
not
you.
only are you doing what you're doing beautifully, but it's really needed, like right now, especially, and I think more so in the coming years. Like,
Yeah.
how do we deal with grief and loss so that it doesn't just sink us to the bottom of the ocean and leave us there, but
Right.
actually we're able to be with it and move with it and
Mhm.
let it move through us and transform us in the way that it's supposed to be. It's funny, there's a channeled message I did, I think it was a couple of years ago, and the Z's call it grief the great transformer, which is an aspect of grief that I think we don't often consider or look at
Mhm.
culturally in the norm way of thinking anyway.
Yeah. And I remember when I listened to that, I knew. I listened to that when it came out, when the Z said that, and it was like, oh man, I knew that was exactly what I was going through. And that process of transformation into what I'm experiencing now, yeah, it
Mm,
definitely has been a huge catalyst
mm,
in an evolution of Becki.
mm.
Mhm.
Well, one thing that we've talked about a lot in this conversation, and I think it's really powerful to talk a little bit about it, is
Okay.
your process of channel writing. Because as you know, because you've been around me for a while, I've come to realize that's one of the things I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to remind people that channeling is something that if it aligns with you, if you like it, if you listen to channeling, there's a part of you that's just remembering a skill
Mhm.
that you have or a connection with a realm. And it doesn't always mean that you'll speak to your guides. For I always say, start with your soul. Have a
Mhm.
conversation with your higher self or your soul, because we can all do that. So I love that you're very actively not only incorporating that into your own personal life and way of supporting yourself, but also your work. So what advice would you give someone who is listening or watching, loving the sound of what you're doing, but feels like, oh, well, I can't do that? What advice would you give anybody?
I think the hardest part initially is to trust, just to let go. You just have to let go and just trust that something will come through. So, for me, I mean, I start with just a thought of, what do you have to share with me? Like I did with my cancer cells. And then I just write, and I just write, and I don't think. I try to let go of the thinking mind, and I just write. And, it feels awkward at first, perhaps, but you're going to end up finding little nuggets that you're like, wow, wow, where did that come from? Oh, I never thought about that. How did that happen? And so, for me, it's been a very powerful practice, Lee, and I've done it for a lot of years now, and it's even more powerful now than it has been. So I would just encourage people to try to let that judgment of self go and just step into trusting that you have it. Everyone has the ability. I've worked with a lot of people who they're fearful at first. They don't know if they can do it. And yet they're blown away by what ends up coming through. I had one young man we were doing a guided meditation, and I said, let's just do some channel writing. Let's just try this. Let's just try this with me. And so we asked a question, had him write it down, and then he just wrote. And when he got done, he read this paragraph off, and he just looked at me stunned. And he said, I don't know where this came from, but it was powerful. And so I think, it's getting past that little hurdle of trust and not trusting ourselves. Because we all have it in us. We all have the ability to connect, like you said, to that higher self. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be channeling grandma right away, right? But that higher self, we all have access.
And the more you do it, the more specific, useful, detailed it becomes. Initially, it's often a calibration process to that level of love, that way of speaking to yourself that isn't perhaps the way you normally speak to yourself in your mind. I've shared my story a lot of times about how much self-judgment I had in my mind, which allowed me, when I first heard the Z's, to go, this isn't like the normal voice. The normal voice is not this nice or this useful. But it's funny because, I've shared the same story. I will invite people at workshops we've done to do it. And if I think of some of the biggest workshops we did, where there were, say, 300 people in the room for the day, and I tell everyone, now you're going to channel right for yourself. And that's why we've given you all this big cardboard. It's so interesting because the whole energy changes. Like, they're fine if I'm talking, and the minute I tell them they're going to do it, people go like this. And it's never, ever fails that we do it. We put some music on for 5 minutes, people go for it. And then at the end of it, people won't stop writing. Some people are crying. Nobody has ever had trouble doing it. Even if you just write 4 words, even if you are powerful, it's like, whoa, it's huge. And I think it's just something that's so healthy for all of us to do, either as a daily maintenance, or if you're stuck with something. I did it last week, and I ask a question, how am I doing today? Because I can tell something's off. And I get all this information, and then it's like, oh, I feel so much better now. I understand what's moving through me. So it's fantastic. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people will hopefully be picking up pen and paper now.
I know, right. Well, and for me, the big one was trust. It was just learning to trust that I was doing something, out of my thinking mind, that it wasn't my thinking mind, that I was doing it, and trusting the information that then came through. Jack is continually telling me, Becki, trust what's happening, trust the process, trust that you're getting this guidance and information. So that's a big one for me, was trust.
I think it's a big one for all of us.
Okay.
I think that, because don't you think, because it's not like we've, in school, they didn't say, now we're all going to channel right, If they had, we would see it as completely normal, and we wouldn't even question it as adults.
Right.
So, yeah.
I know my granddaughter, she's really cute now. I have 7 and a 4-year-old granddaughters, and my little 7-year-old, she's like, oh, Grandma sees spirits.
Yeah.
Grandma talks to spirits. I'm like, yeah, actually, honey. Yeah. And then I'm normalizing it with those little ones. It's great.
And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this bridge generation that we're in. I think it kind of makes the younger ones coming up. Someone said to me the other day, wow, they're just so easy with things. And I went, well, yeah, they kind of should be, really, because if you think about it, when we were growing up, there was an absence of what we now take for granted and what we're seeing permeate the world. So for them, they don't have to go through that hurdle. I mean, there are other hurdles, but yeah, I love that. So Becki, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you for being here. But I'll ask you one question before we go. So we're recording this early February. I know it will come out in March. What do you feel for yourself in the next 12 months? Whether that's just a feeling of a state of being, or a thing that you think you're moving towards. What's your sense of your next 12 months?
I have complete excitement, Lee. I feel like 2020 for me, I've been feeling the energy coming. I've been feeling the energy building and coming. And I know that it's part of, again, that stepping out into the world in a bigger way. I recognize that that's coming, and it's happening. And I am so honored and blessed to be stepping into that and recognizing that, and knowing that the world is really in need right now, Lee, of people who can hold space for grief, for love, for compassion, for empathy and awareness. I know it's so needed in the world. And so I see myself really stepping in and stepping up. And I have a lot of support to do that. So
You do. And as someone who's had the privilege of seeing your journey over the last decade, watching you just really embody that purpose that you were always in. You were
Yeah.
always in your purpose. And that level of heart and energy that you have was always there. But
Yeah.
witnessing what you're doing with it now and how you're creating an energy field in the world is just beautiful. So
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
salute you and thank you.
Thank you.
And I love you, my friend. It's
I
really
love you too.
precious to have this time with you. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing so openly and vulnerably in all the ways that you are.
Yeah.
It's going to help so many people.
Thank you, Lee.
So we will see you all next time. But for those of you who want to check out Becki's work, you can go to beckikoon.com. We will put that on the screen now. And if you go to the show notes, we will put links to Becki's website and also this incredible book, 20 Days Changed Everything. If you've resonated with this in any way, you are going to absolutely love the book. So thank you again, Becki. Lots of love,
Yes.
everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Impact the World. For those of us who are sensitive, intuitive, or walking a spiritual path, it is our practices and the support that we have in our life that often is the key to how well we can walk through life. 9 years ago, I created the portal to be an answer to that need for members of my community who wanted to go more in depth with my work. And while my work is still very much a centerpiece of the portal, we have now added other teachers, other voices, other offerings, so that the portal can become a well-rounded place for you to receive nourishment and be uplifted, shifted, and supported every single month. Here is a look at some of the offerings that you receive every month as a portal member. Once a month, I do a 90-minute live video broadcast. Don't worry if you can't be there live, everything in the portal is provided to you as a replay. But doing it live is a chance for me to be with you as a community. And in that broadcast, I channel, I speak about the energies of the month and expand on my monthly energy update, and also take some community questions. Every month, you will also receive an MP3. And the MP3 will either be a channeled message from my guides, the Z's, set to original music from Davor Bozik, or it will be an energy alchemy meditation or some other energy teaching. These will be put into your members' library and you will have access to them to stream and download. We also give you access to a classics library where we take 8 classic recordings from recent years so that you can listen to more. Qigong and wellness teacher Stephen Washington gives you an exclusive Qigong sequence every single month. It's called the Body Energy Update, and he takes the themes from my monthly energy updates on YouTube and creates a movement sequence for you designed to support you and your process as we go through each month. Stephen is also a wonderful meditation teacher, and so you will have access to a library of short, digestible meditations from him. As soon as you join, you will also get access to our bonus Intuitive Power Workshop. This was a tour that we took to several different countries a couple of years ago, and we had it professionally filmed. So you will be able to watch a 4.5-hour video workshop where both myself and Stephen teach you about accessing and owning your intuition in a deeper way. And to round all of this out, we have special member discounts on courses of mine. We also have special music playlists each month. One set of songs designed to help soothe you, and one set of songs designed to get you moving. And last year, we brought to the portal something I have wanted to do for a very long time, the Portal Presents. It's where I get to invite some incredible teachers, creatives, healers, musicians into the portal, and every month we spotlight one of them where they deliver an on-camera teaching specifically for our portal members. It's a beautiful new feature. We have had some incredible people coming in, and we've got some amazing people lined up for the next year. And the final aspect of the portal is mine and my team's favorite. It's the community energy. So As well as having a private members forum inside the portal for those of you who aren't on social media, we also have a private, moderated Facebook group exclusively for portal members. This is where so many members get to share what they're experiencing, things they're learning, people they're enjoying, and essentially connecting you with people from all over the world who are focused on similar interests to you. My aim with the portal has always been to offer you as much value for your membership as possible, and I feel like in the last year or so we have really been able to maximize that. So we look forward to welcoming you to the portal, and we hope it is a place that can nourish your mind, your body, and your soul. Big love.